welcome to this edition of a walk down memory lane. We will go down memory lane to discuss what we want to discuss this evening. I'm your host, Earl Based, joining me is the president of the Bermuda Football Association, Mr. Mark Wade, as well as the technical development director, Mr. Maurice Lowe. Gentlemen, first of all, thank you very much for taking the opportunity to join me this evening. We're going to be talking about what we consider a U-turn. A U-turn made by clubs at, I want to say, semi-annual meeting?
Yep, semi-annual.
Semi-annual. That has raised a few eyebrows in certain clubs as well, I'm pretty sure. Mr. Wade, obviously, the association was looking to have improved coaches with licenses and the like to try and improve the football standard as well. Clubs agreed to having what we consider fines and working towards getting coaches, up to the B license. Can you just give us some background on that, and then Maurice, I want to talk to you about that coaching side. But first of all, Mr. Wade, just give us some background on the decision that was made as to, when the clubs made the decision or agreed to the decision that they wanted to work towards the if you didn't have it, you were going to get fined and, the like.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to probably put it in the proper context, the idea of coaches having a certain level of coach education in order to coach in the leagues dates back 2009, which is an idea implemented or sort of disseminated out to the clubs by Derek Broadley and the under the Calderon administration. So it dates back a while, right? And what we did really under the current administration is put some structure to it in order to really embed it, I guess, is the word I'm going to use. So in 2016, we introduced the idea of licensing for coaches, and we implemented the coach license policy in 2018. We worked along with the Coaches Association. To be honest, the Coaches Association is the body that actually wrote the document. And I think we did a couple of tweaks, Maurice, to the document, and then off it went, right? And the sort of process that we've been using is just to try and encourage coaches, encourage clubs, and the sort of enforcement side of the policy we kind of gradually ramped up to it. And so the policy had sanctions in it for unlicensed coaches from the outset, and we sort of took the view that we needed to allow coaches and clubs to kind of have the opportunity to embrace the policy, kind of work through it, provide us any feedback that needed to be fed back to us, and then we started to enforce the policy. So this at the last Congress meeting, which was our semi-annual in January, the clubs voted to totally rescind any sanctions that we had set out, and wanted us to basically suspend the policy until they have had a chance to discuss and then agree with us any sort of things going forward. I'll say this, that it's disappointing. This is the second time that the clubs have had this kind of vote. So it is disappointing. But I think the idea of improving coaches and improving the level of coaching in the country is important. If we want to succeed, if we want to reach the goals that the BFA has, and even for clubs to reach their goals, right? And also being able to provide a better product to our customers, which are players and parents, right? So yeah, that's kind of the background, the backdrop to it. So right at the moment, we're waiting on the clubs to regroup, have a discussion, and invite us into the president's forum so we can kind of figure out what the issues are. Not sure what they could be at this stage. They did give us a preview of what some of the issues are, but for me, 6 years on, is pretty a long time for to then find out that we have issues. So there you go.
Well, let me ask you: did this kind of catch you offside that they decided to do this?
Didn't catch me offside. Because we actually issued sanctions in December, and there were quite a number of them, quite a number of clubs impacted, and I understand the clubs, obviously being having come from the clubs from years and years of being involved at PAC, so I understand, and I can appreciate what sort of discussions would have happened once they saw the sanctions. So I wasn't surprised, but definitely disappointed.
And Maurice, first of all, good evening. The importance of having or working towards the B license. I know Mr. Wade has already said that it was the Coaches Association who actually wrote the document of getting, wanting guys to be, striving towards something. You guys tweaked it a little bit, but the significance of having a B license, what do you think is, or why do you think that would have been one of the goals set?
Well, it's in coach education. You say that better coaches, help to develop better players. Better players, then make the game better. So as the president alluded to earlier about, the product that we're able to put on display, that's coach education is one of the meaningful ways that we can help to improve the levels of our football.
When you look at, we talk about improving the level of football, and a lot of people talk about, well, we have to work with the young people. This policy that was put in place, correct me if I'm right or wrong, or correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at senior teams right now. Should we be also pushing to have the youth coaches, obtaining the higher licenses as well?
So yes, that's good practice throughout the world. So we had to first implement coach licensing. So you can't start at the top. Mm-hmm. And when I say the top, meaning coach education in the last 5 years now has gone to where coaches can specialize in youth football. So we have grassroots football in Bermuda, U5s to U11s. And then we have youth football, U13s, U15s, U17s, and then we have senior football after that. So what's becoming the norm worldwide is that you can specialize. So I can get a B license in coaching U7s, and the B license isn't the top of the coaching round, so there's an A license above that, and then there's a pro license above the A license. So when we first brought into the coach licensing pyramid, that was the intention, or the discussions that we were having at the time is like end goal, we want to get the best coaches down to the grassroots level so that, the foundation is strong, that we have good practitioners at the entry points of people's football and experience.
Sure.
I think, Carl, just to jump in, I just think, just to clarify, the policy actually embraces children's, youth, and senior football. So this policy involves all three of those. So coaches who are coaching at children's football, which is under 11, 9, and 7, are required to have a D license. And those who are coaching under 13, 15 and 17 are required to have a C license, and then all senior coaches are required to have a B license. So the policy embraces all levels. And also, just as a point of information, is that the coaching education part of it, technical part of it, is a B diploma, which is put on by the BFA and the Bermuda Coaches Association. And then in order to get a license to coach in Bermuda, or so very similar to a driver's license, you need to have a CPR, AED, and first aid training certification. And you're also required to have SCARS. I have taken the SCARS certification as well. And so with those three elements, it's our view that you now have a coach who has the necessary tools to coach at specific levels. And what's also important to notice that the license must be renewed every 3 years. And in order to renew that license, you have to have 10 hours, Reese? 10 hours.
Did we lose? I think we lost Mark.
No, he's still there.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yeah. I hear
okay.
you.
Yes. Yeah. In order to renew the license, you have to have completed, I think it's 10 or 15 hours of continuing coach education. So it's, the game is always changing. And so the continuing coach education is important as well, right? So I just wanted to provide that additional information to add some clarity.
Sure. Well, let's just break the surface a little bit, because I remember when this came into existence, there was those coaches that didn't have the required licenses, as long as they had a quote unquote mentor at the club or at the games. The clubs, and then that person was working towards getting the license. Were there fines implemented then, or no?
Well, the mentor was only for B license coaches who are working towards a B license in the senior leagues. The D and C license, no, there wasn't no mentor for that.
Okay. That seemed to go by the wayside this year, as I saw less and less mentors, despite people not having the required licenses. Why do you think that actually took place?
I think, can I answer that one? I think we made a big effort to target the clubs and those individuals that were coaching in senior football that didn't have the B license certification, the diploma, and then the actual license. So we finished the B course last August, and we specifically targeted lots of coaches that needed that certification level. So there was a lesser need for mentors. I mean, the mentorship program was never intended to be a perpetual program. It was a stopgap measure so that we can get the coaches up to the required license level, so that they could coach in the senior levels of our football.
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation, because I think it's important that people understand that with what was implemented and what's now been retracted, it's kind of setting us back. But we haven't heard from the other side. So we'll be right back.
Putting down the weapons.
You seeing this?
John Barrett & Son is bringing us something fresh and exciting for the new year. Bai Antioxidant Infusion Beverage. Bai delivers the natural antioxidant benefits of the coffee fruit in glorious combination with a variety of exotic fruit flavors, with only 1 gram of sugar and 10 calories per bottle. The folks at Bai are inviting us on a world tour through these amazing flavors. Brasilia blueberry, Zambia Bing cherry, Costa Rica clementine, Malawi mango, Panama peach, Ipanema pomegranate, Kupang strawberry kiwi, and more. Lindo's. Why go anyplace else?
I'm also thankful and grateful because my greatest value of my life is my legacy.
But why I do it? I feel supposed to do it. I was put here to be here, to do what I'm doing right now. Once I see somebody moving, it's the greatest joy for me. There's a little person being born.
I am thankful that people have given me the trust, for me to empower them, from my players to my family to friends. And that's what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that people have allowed me and trusted me to be in their life.
I'll come back. Oh, gentlemen, when we talk about coaching education, and over the years, there's always been some disconnect with the Coaches Association. I was under the impression that when this policy was kind of written and understood that it's to better the game in Bermuda, I thought things were only up and up for that part. However, it looks as if the clubs weren't on board. Am I right?
I'm not sure that the clubs weren't on board. I think administratively there's some improvements that need to be made. Because at the end of the day, it's the clubs who are being sanctioned, not the individual coaches themselves. So the clubs are being sanctioned for registering and engaging unlicensed coaches. And I think some of it's is an administrative process that wasn't undertaken. So in terms of being on board, no, I think the clubs are on board. I think the clubs do understand that better coaches create better players, which creates a better product. So I think I would say that the clubs are definitely on board with that idea. And now what we're discussing now is the enforcement of the idea and the sort of application of the idea, right? And I think that's where we have to have some more discussions with the club to understand. Because I think while we weren't enforcing the policy vigorously, I think clubs were, just not really paying attention, but maybe they have some other thought behind it. And then once we did now vigorously do it, and as I said to the clubs in the Congress, at some point the rubber has to hit the road. Then I think the reality of the situation may have hit him. Hopefully it has hit him, and we can sit down with them and sort of work out how we keep this policy going forward, right?
Right. So I mean, excuse me, as you've indicated, the policy is there, and the requirements of coaches to work with not only our youngsters but our adults as well, to go through the scars, to go through all that coaching education. Do you think it just came down to dollars and cents when the fines were implemented that the clubs wanted to make this U-turn, or what responsibility do they have to ensure that the coaches that they hire have the qualifications?
Well, I'll answer your first question first. I'm sure that is an element to it, right? Dollars and cents. And we'll have to discuss with them for what other elements are to it. And it is entirely on the clubs to ensure that the coaches that they engage are licensed.
Yeah. I mean, Maurice, let me ask you, can you detail what it takes to obtain a D license and a C license for, what did you call it? Not youth. Youth is the 11 through 17.
Children's football.
Children's. Okay. So
Grassroots.
give us a sense of what it takes to obtain a children's D license.
Yeah. So the education process is to allow the coach to understand the developmental stages of a player. So they say that a 6-year-old is not half of a 12-year-old. It's, when you're at 12-year-old, there's optimal windows and things that you should be working on at that chronological age or biological age. But, at a younger age, there are some things that you should be working on as well. So through the education process, we are then able to marry the knowledge and abilities of the coach with long-term athletic development. And long-term athletic development basically goes from birth to death, where we want to have, people that are active, that are living active lives, even beyond, playing senior football. This is why we have a master's division as well, so that people can be active for life. But there are optimal windows, that, at certain ages, it's best or beneficial or good practice, to be focusing in on different things, so at the children's football ages, per se, that's more technical. So we shouldn't be running a lot of shuttles or doing push-ups and things, because the body's not physically ready for that. At that point, the body's trying to get a hold of gross motor skills. And then, when we're getting into youth football, and it varies from gender, from boys and girls. So the girls develop faster, so from the age of 7 to 11 for girls, and maybe 8 to 12 for boys. That's when the body, the brain wants to learn how to do things. It wants fine motor skills at that point, so that we can get to controlling the ball and doing other things. Our body is developmentally ready to be working on the skills at that time. And then there's the psychology of it. So, in children's football, if you have U5s and U7s, they're very self-centered and me, so they're thinking of themselves. So you have 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds, and you tell them pass. If you ever watch 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds play, it's I got the ball, it's my ball, and it's my turn to do something with the ball. So the stages of coach licensing or coach education, it marries with the biological development of people, and it helps us to now focus in on what things are critical for a player at different ages. And coach education gives us an opportunity to share that message to the coaches, and to address coaches' behavior, coaches' sideline behavior, how you interact with parents, how you interact with referees. So it's interesting. So whenever I see or hear of an incident of a coach that's acting untoward, I ask the name or see and say, I can see it's somebody that hasn't been to coach education. So coach education gives us the opportunity to address the issues. One of our topics is leadership. It's what things can you control, what things can you influence, beginning with yourself. And that progresses from the D diploma to the C diploma to the B diploma, because the leadership that's necessary varies at the varying ages. So the stages of long-term athletic development are active start, fundamentals, learning to train, training to train, training to compete, training to win. And for the experience of the player, if you have a coach that's coaching in a stage, so say I want to win championships, but I'm coaching in U7s, that's not the place for that. That's the place to be honing in on skills, so that when the player gets to 15, 16, 17, when we're training to compete and training to win, then they have the tools in the toolbox to be able to do that.
Well, let me ask this question. Someone starting out and you have a D course. You usually have it before the season starts in August, yes?
Yeah, so hot off the presses, but we've just come up with a fixed schedule for coach education. So this week we'll be sending out lots of save the dates for the various course levels, and also because we're trying to align our coach education with the registration process for teams and coaches. So that we want to have the majority of our coach education finished by July 15th, which is the registration deadline for teams. And then, because that's the challenge, because now we have coach licensing, we need to make sure that we're putting on enough courses, so that we can have enough individuals that are certified or qualified or licensed to be coaching in football. And then even for girls football, the licensing is coming online in September of 2023 as well. So we didn't, in order to get girls football up and running, we relaxed the coach licensing requirements for that. Now girls football has some momentum, and now we're implementing the coach licensing for the girls game as well.
So what would you say would be a timeline for someone to go from a D starting out to a B? Is that a 3-year process or longer?
Longer, because so they call that course hopping. So you need it's like being a pilot where you need some seat hours, where you can actually practice and implement the things that you've learned on the course, to see what works well for you, what doesn't, to do some tweaks. So I would say 5 years, 5 or 6 years would be to go from just walked in off the streets and didn't have any experience or knowledge of coaching football, to go to the D diploma, the C diploma, and then the B diploma.
Now, Mr. Wade, let me ask you, because, and even Maurice, we came up in an era where we had a lot of people that were club supporters and into the sport that taught or coached youth football when we were playing without license and so forth, and was giving good information. I mean, because they had the respect of the young people. Now we're implementing where they need these licenses in order to do so. So we're progressing. What changed? What made it? Or what has made the association and I guess globally, what has changed where we now have these licenses and you have to be registered in order to coach?
Well, I think the desire to continually improve and stay up to date with the trends of football. I think that's the driving force behind it. And you can for me, you have to use comparisons to other licenses that are out there, right? Teachers have to have a license, and they have PD hours, professional development hours, that they have to do all through the school year, right? You have accountants who have to do a certain amount of continuing education to stay on top of accounting trends. Doctors, like it goes on and on and on, right? And I think if we're going to stay abreast of the game, right? Could you imagine 30 years ago it was a leather ball, leather boots, the ball was heavy, to now, nobody wears leather boots unless you're in love with copas, right? And because now the game's faster. So your coaching has to change to keep up with these things, right? So it's a lot of changes that happen, and coach education is a way to stay abreast of. And it's still room for that person who doesn't necessarily want to go through coach education, because the policy talks about and deals with the head coaches of teams. So if there's that former player who wants to be involved but doesn't have the time or motivation to go through the whole coach education process and licensing process, that person could still be involved as an assistant coach. So the policy, doors embrace that idea.
Mm, mm. Well, we're going to take a second commercial break. But Maurice, I want you to think about this and answer this when we come back from the break.
Okay.
A lot of people, talk about the National Academy, and we have coaches coaching the National Academy teams that have never had experience of coaching, a senior team or a league team and so forth. I just want you to think about that and how you will respond to that question, okay?
Sure.
We'll be
Definitely.
right back.
I'm also thankful and grateful because my greatest value of my life is my legacy.
But why I do it? I feel supposed to do it. I was put here to be here, to do what I'm doing right now. Once I see somebody moving, it's the greatest joy for me. There's a little person being born.
I am thankful that people have given me the trust, for me to empower them, from my players to my family to friends. And that's what I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that people have allowed me and trusted me to be in their life.
Joker's putting down the weapons.
You seeing this?
Here's one of our favorite feature brands, true veterans of the food awareness movement. Bob's Red Mill, the U.S. leading miller of organic whole grain foods. Only whole grains have the entire value developed during growth. And once you try them, you know that this is the way food was intended to be. Try Bob's Red Mill blanched almond, whole wheat pastry, and artisan bread flours, and 1-to-1 gluten-free baking flour, unsweetened shredded coconut, gluten-free homemade wonderful bread mix, and a variety of rolled oats. Lindo's. Why go anyplace else?
And welcome back. Well, Maurice, I saw you smiling as I asked that question. So can you answer that or clear some of that up for me?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a coach educator, Earl. I believe in coach education. I've been a part of the majority of the courses that we've done for the last, 10 years or so. So I'm very intimate in that process. So I get to see in the coach education courses, I get to see a lot of the coaches that are coming through. I remember, so it's an interesting one, so when the president was on his B license course, I was one of the educators on that course. And
you marked his paper?
The other, big personalities in our local game. So my philosophy as an educator, when I look at it from the perspective of the football workforce that we have and that we need, so in many instances, or people that put forth that question many times say you need the best coaches. And then I say, okay, well, let's define best. So you alluded to it in the question to say that, coaches that haven't coached senior football, well, not all of my teams are senior teams. Mm-hmm. I have a U15 team, a U17 team, U20s. We just started U23s, and then we have the senior team in both genders. Mm-hmm. So when we look at what workforce we need for our football, particularly national teams, which is one of the parts of my responsibilities. I'm always on the lookout for coaches that will fit into international football, and international football is not the exact same thing as domestic football. So I'm always on the lookout for talent. There's a talent identification process, even in coach education or in coaches, to see coaches that can fit into the national program at any given time. And then, lots of times it's just a matter of timing as well. So it's not everybody that we would like to be interested or involved in the national program isn't always available to do so. And when that's the case, international football doesn't stop just because Maurice Leu is unavailable. You know, so we still need to make sure that we're producing coaches and having a workforce so that we can have more best coaches, you know, as football progresses. So I don't want to be, or don't want us to be, in the same position that we were in 5 years ago. 5 years from now, through the coach education process, I want us to have more better developed coaches, you know, so that we can go from strength to strength.
Well, just to add on to that, how is a National Academy coach selected? Is there a process where if one is interested, they contact you, or do you just scout the talent?
Both. So we do that with players as well. So our policy is an open door policy. So in terms of players, you know, so, and hopefully this message gets around the out there, and we're getting better here lately as relationships improve. But if a club coach has a player that isn't involved in the National Academy or the national program, and they think they are, it's one of our advantages as a small country to say, hey, I've got this person I think you should have a look at least. You know, and the same thing is applicable for coaches. So it depends on what type of coach we're looking for. So if it's an assistant coach, if it's a goalkeeper coach, if it's a head coach, you know, so many times for assistants, you know, the head coach, we ask the head coach, well, you know, are there any people that you're interested in working with? Are there any people that, you know, have a good relationship with that you think can fit into our program? Well, and then we'll go through an interview process with that individual. Then, and Mr. President, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, we take that person's name to the player development committee as well. You know, so there's been times where I've had my knuckles wrapped and say, hey, no, you're moving too fast. You know, let's go through the process so that we can, you know, make sure that the people that we're getting fit well into our organization, you know, and that are gonna increase and improve, you know, the product of our national teams.
Sure. So Mr. President, back to this U-turn. So right now, all that process is on hold, or they voted to just do away with the sanctions that were implemented and handed out in December?
So a bit of both. They did vote to do away with the sanctions that were handed out, and we did have to return the sanctions that were paid. Some clubs, you know, admitted their transgression and paid the sanction, so we did have to return those monies, and the any further sanctions are on hold. So I have had conversations with Mr. President Deal, who leads the President's Forum, and you know, they've committed to meeting with us between now and the beginning of 2024 season, 23 September this year, to get some resolution to all of this. So you know it's not it's not a complete process by no means. So I would imagine that they want to have a meeting among themselves initially, and then you know, we'll start out a series of meetings so that we can bring some resolution to it.
Sure. And just to clear, I did reach out to President Dill as well to join me on a show to discuss the club's side. I think because it's important that everybody hears both sides, and he has indicated that he wanted to meet with the other clubs first, and then he'll get back to me. So hopefully,
put the water, Earl. There's only one side, Bermuda football, and you know we want the best for Bermuda football.
I totally understand that. But well, yes, I totally understand that, and I can appreciate that. So during the semi-annual, you get this. Was it a part of the agenda? Did they ask for that to be a part of the agenda, or was this any other business?
No, it wasn't part of a specific item on the agenda, but under the Player Development Committee report, we did raise the topic and ask, to hear from the clubs, and then that's when the motion was put on the floor.
Okay, all right. So explain to, as Mr. Lowe has said, it's a Bermuda Football Association. So explain to your customers what this means for Bermuda football.
Well, I mean, what it means at the moment is that we have a policy that doesn't have relevant sanctions to hold people accountable. So at the moment, so that is on hold, and we are committed to resolving those issues before the start of the next season.
So currently, right now, we have coaches in let's talk about the senior division. We have coaches that have C licenses in the C division. I mean, in the senior division that we're working towards the B, but they can now stop that process until it's decided how they're going to move forward, Maurice.
Not many are. So the vast majority of our coaches have the certification level to apply for the license that they require. More than 90% of the coaches have the certification level. So I think maybe I'm speaking out of turn. It was the lapse. So I had a license. My license expired.
Yes.
And now I haven't taken the steps to renew my license. But I'm still, being a practitioner as a coach. And in many, so it's not chronic where we have a lot of coaches that don't have the required certification level to coach in our leagues. That's not the case at all. Most of the coaches have the required certification level without reapplying to have the license renewed.
Yeah, and I think what's important is that we want to make this systematic, right? Some persons might recall courses under John Beard, right? He must have been an instructor for everybody at one point, right? He was certainly mine, right? There's that coach education then waned. Then we weren't having coach education for a while. Then it picked up again under Derek Bordley. So what we're trying to do is make it systematic so that it does not depend on any one administrator, doesn't depend on any one executive team or so we want to make it so that it's a systematic approach, and it's fully embedded in football in Bermuda.
And okay, so what I'm hearing is it's mental lapses, or it's just I'll get it when I get it, renew my license.
No, I don't think it's that. Like I said, the vast majority, if not everyone, of our clubs believe in coach education, and believe in improving coaches, improves the game, improves the product that we provide to our customers, whether it be fans or parents and players. So I think everybody believes in that. I think like I said earlier in the program, I think part of the problem is administrative. But I know it is because that's one of the things that were discussed at the semi-annual. We just need to have a meeting specifically to dig a little deeper to find some of the root causes and then address.
Well, we're going to take another commercial break, our final one. When we come back, I want to ask either of you to answer this question when we come back. When teams fill out who their coaches are, is it the requirement of the association to advise that club if that person has a current license or not? Just think about that, and we'll come back to that. We'll be right back.
It seems everyone knows someone who's lactose intolerant or just avoiding dairy products. And fortunately, there's a growing array of delicious and nutritious alternatives. Pacific Natural Foods have been doing things their own way simply and sustainably for over a quarter century, making non-dairy beverages with the finest possible ingredients right down to the packaging. Try Pacific Natural Original and Vanilla Hemp Milk and Almond Original Plant-Based Beverage, all sweetened or unsweetened, and low-sodium organic vegetable or chicken broth. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
I'm also thankful and grateful because my greatest value of my life is my legacy.
But why I do it? I feel supposed to do it. I was put here to be here, to do what I'm doing right now. Once I see somebody moving, it's the greatest joy for me. There's a little person being born.
I am thankful that people have given me the trust, for me to empower them, from my players to my family to friends, and that's what I'm thankful for.
Putting down the weapons.
You seeing this?
And welcome back. Well, who's totally responsible to ensure that a coach that is with a club has the requirements, the proper licensing and all that to ensure that that person is qualified to do the job?
So for me, it's twofold. So I continue to draw the analogy to a driver's license. If you want to drive, you make sure that your license is valid. And if somebody wants to hire me for a truck driving job, they're not going to hire me if I can't produce a valid driver's license, or at least be able to confirm that I have a valid driver's license. So that's one side of it. The other side is that, yes, once teams are registered, once you register your team, the office will receive that registration, and then those registrations are evaluated. So for the senior leagues, because there's only 21 coaches, happens pretty quickly, right? Where we'll be able to say, okay, we'll send an email out and say your coach isn't licensed or his license is expired. And they'll be advised of the sanction and when it needs to be paid. With the youth leagues and let me just say the senior leagues, I think we completed that process fairly quickly, and clubs were informed sometime in September. With the youth leagues, a lot more coaches, takes a lot more time to go through that process and go through each one of the registrations. And so I think everybody was reminded of the coach licensing policy and the sanctions in August. And with the youth leagues, the sanctions went out in, I want to say November. Don't quote me on that. But that's kind of the process. And of course there's a little leeway in terms of if there is some discrepancies between our records and theirs, right? And there's some nuances in the policy as well. So if anybody is currently enrolled on a course, then you avoid the sanction for that particular coach. And that's in anticipation of that coach being successful on the course that he's on. So there's nuances as well that are within the policy.
Sure. Maurice, can you just explain what the role is of the Bermuda Coaches Association?
Yeah, the Bermuda Football Coaches Association is a close partner with the Bermuda Football Association. So that relationship, has evolved over the years. It's like currently. So here we go. I have meetings with CONCACAF and FIFA about having to have things like coach licensing in place. How many courses are we putting on? Like FIFA and CONCACAF love to send surveys to say, okay, well, how are you doing? What were the metrics that you were trying to hit for this year, and how are you doing in terms of doing that? So I have to sign off or with CONCACAF and FIFA to say, here's what we're attempting to do, here are the courses that we're attempting to have for this year. And then the Bermuda Football Coaches Association is a close partner in helping us to deliver those courses. So every course that we've had, we had 4 courses in last year. And the Bermuda Football Coaches Association was a part of all of this. So we work in partnership, for coach education. So I think the Bermuda Football Coaches Association mission statement speaks to developing an army of coaches from Somerset to St. George's. So their mandate is to help us to get enough coaches certified for the level for the various levels within our pyramid.
And I guess I would have to get with them a little more to figure out how they're actually bringing people on board, or do they allow the clubs to send people to them to get involved and then come to these courses?
So they have the Bermuda Football Coaches Association had an AGM in January, I believe.
Yeah.
Dennis Braun is the new president of the Bermuda Football Coaches Association, who's also a member of the Player Development Committee. And then myself and the BFCA, we meet on a monthly basis. The outgoing president was Richard Todd, who did quite a lot of work in order for us to make sure that coach education was continuing. So it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy task to put on courses. So I'm thankful for the relationship with the Bermuda Football Coaches Association, and that we continue to partner and go from strength to strength to try to improve coach education in Bermuda.
Mr. Weir, in our first session, you talked about disappointment. What would you think, and I'm asking you as the president, would be a resolution or a happy resolution to putting something back in place to ensure that we don't have this issue, like Marie said, like Mr. Lowe said, 5 years down the road?
Well, it's not for me, I guess. The word I'm going to say. It's going to be something that the clubs are comfortable with, and it can't be. For me, it can't be a short-term view, right? Short-term view is we don't want to get fined, so don't fine us. That's a short-term view. A longer-term view has to be how do we hold the clubs accountable? How do we hold coaches accountable? And what does that look like? That's the way I'll answer that question. Because I don't even want to preempt any discussion that we're gonna have. So I'm going into it with an open mind to really hear what the issues are.
And do you expect this to come up at the next AGM, or are you hoping that a meeting is held? As Mr. Lowe said, the registration deadline is July. Are you hoping that you can have a meeting before then and then have some resolution so that everybody knows at deadline date for registration what they're dealing with?
No, like I said, I've spoken with President Deal, and he's committed to us resolving this before that happens. So, the President's Forum is a very important forum for us, because as my thought is that we have to have a lot more touch points, and not wait until congresses to discuss potentially contentious issues, right? I think we need to work harder and more on a more continuous basis to keep football moving and keep the game improving.
The coaches forum, the president's forum, you invited to that? You're the president.
No, I don't go to that on a regular basis. I go when invited, or if there is something that I think they need to hear and we need to discuss. It is their forum, and the idea of the president's forum was always for the clubs to discuss their own challenges and help each other to improve. That was the idea of the president's forum from the outset. So every now and again we do meet with them. We have a yearly retreat as well, where we discuss different improvements that we could make to the game. So yeah, I if they invite me, I'm there. I drop everything and go. The presidents, we're one big team, right? We're one big team. So yeah, if they invite me, I drop everything and go.
Okay. Mr. Lowe, when it comes to the National Academy coaches, how often do you shuffle the deck? And when I say shuffle the deck, move around people, because as we know, if someone's got a U13 or U15 team and they're quite involved in that team, they kind of pass them on to another coach, or do they kind of go with that team? How do we shuffle that deck?
Our academy cycles, it's 2-year age bands.
Right.
So the international football is U15, U17, then it moves up to 23s and seniors. So I like to try to build in the sustainability into that process. So 4 years ago, Scott Morton was the coach of the U15 National Academy. And at that point, his assistant was Vashon Blanchette. So then Scott's moved into the under 23 team now, and his assistant Vashon is now came into the position of head coach for that team. So it's a bit of a balance in that, bro, where we need to have succession planning in mind, as well as enough stability, so that it's not changing frequently enough, so that we're starting all over, so that we bring other coaches in, on a volunteer basis to be able to see, what the need is, or what, so that they can improve as well, as we're going. So that happens as well. So it's a balancing act,
Sure.
trying to have succession planning and stability at the same time.
Right. And this is the most important question of the night. Who decides what system and style Bermuda plays, from the youngsters to the elders?
That's a fantastic question.
I love it.
Yeah, we have our own playing style and game model is being further developed than what we have. So we've had 2 iterations of National Academy curriculum since I've been the technical development director, and now working on our third, which we're trying to make digital, via video, so that you can actually see the parts that are moving. So, without giving away everything internationally, what we have a thing called the Bermuda Girl, and this is how Bermuda schools goes in our international football. And you'll see between both genders, from U15s right through our senior teams, what a Bermuda Girl looks like. And we have a rest and press, so we have a way to play in our monthly coaches meeting for National Academy staff coaches. We're constantly looking for innovations and ways we can improve our playing styles. And most of that comes from our senior men's national team. Coach Carl Lightbourne and Ray Jones, are instrumental. That team being the tip of our spur, and we see the things that are working well with them, and we've had some positive results in the midterm, past. But from that, and then taking that and turning it into programming and sending it on to our other teams and genders, and then even tweaking it for the appropriate team. So an example, we use the rest and press in the defensive movement, but our senior women's team used the rest and press as well, but tweaked it so that it would be more effective for them. So that already exists. That's the challenge is being able to communicate that throughout the country. So both of the curriculums that we currently use, we did have meetings with all of the clubs so that we can deliver what it is that we're doing at the national level, so that the clubs and coaches that are developing players at the club level are at least aware of what it is that we're attempting to do. But if I'm honest or critical of us, that exchange doesn't happen often enough. So I think that is an area that we can improve on, and even the interest. So sometimes when we try to have those conversations, the events aren't well enough attended, for it to be as meaningful as it could be. But yes, yes, we have a curriculum. Yes, we're willing to share it. It's good, and even other countries, like at the TD level, there's a lot of sharing going on. There's no secrets in football. There's not a lot of original thoughts, tactics, and ideas that are happening. Then it comes down to, are you able to implement and execute, the things that you're attempting to do?
Sure. Well, I want to thank both of you for coming on and explaining what you explained this evening. Mr. Lowe, for the technical side of the coaching aspect, and giving us some insight into those coaching levels and what one would have to do to get started, and the process it would take to achieve up to a B license. And Mr. Wade, for your being frank and honest about this U-turn that these clubs have made, and hopefully it is resolved sooner rather than later. And again, I'm hoping that Mr. Dill, after he speaks with the clubs and I guess all the associations, would have the opportunity to come on and share the Bermuda football message from their standpoint as to how we move forward in football in Bermuda. Am I right, Mr. No, I try to.
Yeah, I saw that clever worded. That was cleverly worded.
I try to make sure I worded it in a way that I don't get in trouble, and we all.
What are the coordinates? 64, 32, the latitude and longitude. We're all on this rock together. There is one Bermuda Football Association. There is one Bermuda football. As this example shows that, the clubs were able to vote on matters that pertain to Bermuda football. So the Bermuda Football Association is not only the officers and staff that work at Clyde, that Center of Excellence. Bermuda Football Association is all of us together. If we can get rowing in the same direction altogether, we're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good.